The views or opinions expressed on Ann Arbor Inclusive do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the City of Ann Arbor and the Commission on Disability Issues. For more information about the Ann Arbor Commission on Disability Issues, please visit a2gov.org/disability resources.
Hello everyone and welcome to Ann Arbor Inclusive. I'm Zach Damon. We have a wonderful show for you today as Ashley Elliston, the program coordinator for the Michigan Great Lakes chapter of the Alzheimer's Association, joins us in studio. And Ashley, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So do you mind if we jump right in?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. So first, the Michigan Great Lakes chapter is one of over 70 Alzheimer's Association chapters serving communities across the United States. What was it that led you to start working with the Alzheimer's Association?
In 2016, I started my Master's of Social Work program at the University of Michigan. And through the program, everyone does an internship to help get experience in the field.
Sure.
And so my first placement was at the Alzheimer's Association. And once I started there, it's pretty hard not to fall in love with being there and working there. There's a group of amazing people who are employed there, and
Sure.
everyone is really, really passionate about our mission. We joke that we're trying to ultimately put ourselves out of a job because we want to find a cure for the disease. And
Sure.
so just being around people who are so passionate and so caring and just love doing what they do was really inspiring, and so I knew I had to stick around. So when they had a full-time position open up, I went ahead and applied for it, and fortunately got the position, and so yeah, I'm here to stay.
Here you are. And how long have you been with them?
So I started as an intern in September of 2016 and was there for a little over a year.
Sure.
And I started in my actual employment capacity in March.
Okay. And, I want to talk about the Alzheimer's Association's mission because I think it's really important. So the mission is to, quote, eliminate Alzheimer's disease through the advancement of research and to provide and enhance care and support for all affected to be able to reduce the risk of dementia through the promotion of brain health. And, your association vision is basically a world without Alzheimer's disease, right?
Yeah.
Now, why do you feel personally that this mission is important?
Well, going back to the School of Social Work that I went into, we had 400 incoming students.
Okay.
And out of those 400 students, only 19 focused on geriatric social work and things that are affecting older adult populations. And right now, about 10 to 12,000 people every day in the U.S. are turning 65. So the population is growing, and there's going to be more and more people who are needing care. And so I think that the Alzheimer's Association is really on the cutting edge of providing this care and trying to make sure that we have resources and structures in place for these people who are aging and who this disease might continue to affect. Currently in Michigan, there's 180,000 people who are age 65 and older who are living with the disease.
Really, 180,000?
So that's, to put it in perspective, about 1.5 times the amount of people who could fit in the Michigan Stadium.
Wow.
So it's a lot of people, and that's again just in Michigan.
Sure.
In the U.S., there's over 5 million people who are living with the disease, and over 16 million people who are caregiving for these people. And so that's something else to keep in mind, that it's not just the people who are living with the disease, but also their loved ones, their children, the people who are helping provide care,
Sure.
who are all affected. And so being a center of help and hope is really important to us. So helping people by providing these education programs and other ways of supporting people who are living with the disease.
Sure.
And also being that piece of hope as we are funding research and now doing some of our own research so we can work towards finding a cure or at least to start a way to prevent and slow the progression of the disease.
You talked about some very, very eye-opening statistics there. I mean, 180,000 people, in the state of Michigan. And again, you and I talked before the show too, and you talked a lot about that hope and, how important it was. And, I agree with you. I mean, it's something that people, can't really turn a blind eye to, if you will. They can't say this isn't important because chances are you know someone or know someone who knows someone that's been affected
Right.
by Alzheimer's. And so,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, and anyone who has a brain is at risk for the disease. And so we try to make that very clear as well, that there's ways that you can reduce your risk of getting Alzheimer's disease, but
Okay.
there's no way that you can prevent the disease. So
Sure.
it is the 6th leading cause of death in the U.S.
Wow.
And it is the only one in the top 10 that there's no way to prevent, cure, or even slow the progression of the disease.
Wow.
So again, if kind of like what you mentioned, if you don't already either have the disease or know someone with the disease or have lost someone with the disease, you're at risk yourself.
Sure.
And so this cause really, I think, it makes sense for everybody to pay attention to and to, work to find a cure and to have a world without Alzheimer's.
Well, and I think the work that you're doing with the Alzheimer's Association, in the Michigan Great Lakes chapter, is doing that. You're taking the steps to do that here in the state of Michigan, and I think that's very noble.
Thanks. Yeah, we're doing what we can, and we of course can't do any of it without all of our. We have so many volunteers and community members and
Sure.
people who have been affected by the disease who contribute to help make our mission possible.
Sure, wonderful. Can you explain, and because I'm a bit naive, right? You hear the terms dementia, and you hear the term Alzheimer's, but for those watching, what is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia, and what are some of the biggest misconceptions?
The disease, yeah. So the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's, to start there, that's probably the most common question that we get. And so dementia we call an umbrella term.
Okay.
So dementia is more a set of symptoms, but it's not a diagnosis in itself.
Got it.
So Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia,
Okay.
but there's other types of dementia as well.
Sure.
So there's alcohol-induced dementia, Parkinson's dementia, Lewy body dementia, vascular dementia, and the list goes on.
Wow.
So all of these different types of dementia have different things that cause them.
Sure.
And though they have a lot of overlapping symptoms, there's also some symptoms that are different. So for
Okay.
example, in some forms of dementia, people may hallucinate.
Okay.
And in other forms, they might not. And so to touch on misconceptions, one really big misconception is that there's no point in getting a diagnosis or learning what type of dementia you have.
Sure.
Because like we mentioned earlier, there is no cure. And
Right.
so maybe, if there's no cure, there's no magic pill you can take, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
But actually, different types of dementia there are different medicines that can help treat symptoms.
Okay.
And some medicines that may treat hallucinations, for example,
Right.
if people choose to do that, could actually aggravate symptoms in a different
wow.
type of dementia.
So it's like a scale, right? It's a balancing scale, and you have to figure out the right balance.
Right, and so it's really important to talk if there are concerns about dementia or memory loss or whatever it may be. It's really important to talk to a physician and try to get an accurate diagnosis.
Sure.
Again, because treatment and support and planning, prognosis of the disease could all look really different. Yeah, and again, and another, I think, misconception, again, is if you have the disease, there's nothing you can do.
Right.
And again, even though there isn't a cure, we have support groups, and there's some medications that are in trial right now that
Okay.
help to give some people a little bit of cognitive brightness,
Sure.
though it wouldn't reverse the disease.
Okay.
And if people want to get involved in research, we have something called Trial Match
Okay.
at alz.org/trial match.
Sure.
And it's kind of like a match.com for
Oh, wow.
research studies.
Sure.
So you fill out your profile, and then if there is a research study that you would be eligible for, you get
Sure.
a notification, and then you can decide whether or not you want to participate.
Okay.
And again, just planning for medical decisions that'll have to be made, financial planning,
Yep.
who is going to be providing care.
Yep.
So there actually is a lot to do in terms of support and planning once you have the diagnosis.
Well, right, and the resources, I would hope, are even getting better, right? I mean, as you guys go along with your research and what you're doing, the resources continue to build and be available for those. Have you noticed, though, for those that come in or reach out to you about treatment or about resources, is there a stigma towards Alzheimer's?
You know, we do talk about that. So in our education programs that we have that are, throughout the community, something we do talk about a lot is stigma. And it's interesting, and we don't know, exactly what it is, but it does seem to be like sometimes people are embarrassed to say they have
Right.
Alzheimer's disease or they're ashamed of it.
Right.
And so we have a lot of really amazing advocates and people who work with our organization who are living with the disease, who speak out and say, there's nothing to be ashamed of.
Right.
This is a disease just like any other disease. There's things we can do, you're still living, you're still a person. We try to maintain someone's sense of self and independence and
Yep.
own personal identity, as long as we can.
Sure.
So I think it's changing. And again, we have our support groups where a lot of folks will connect with each other and start feeling more, confident, like I'm not alone in this.
Sure.
So I do think that the stigma is decreasing, but I think that a lot of people do still feel ashamed of their diagnosis.
I think again, it's amazing that that you guys are there, here in Michigan, to be able to welcome those people that sort of have that, reservation about, oh man, I don't know if I should speak up about this. And do you say you really act as a good voice for those that need help?
We try to just make sure people know that we're here, so they know who to call.
Sure.
And I think, again, like in some of our education videos even, we'll have snippets of people who are living with the disease, who
Yep.
will talk to their own experience. And we try to interview people with the disease and interview their caregivers and care partners.
Sure.
To try to elevate their voices and help people connect with other people who
Sure.
have the disease. And I think we've done a pretty good job, us and other people throughout the nation, of increasing the awareness of Alzheimer's disease.
Sure.
And so now we're really working on increasing awareness of the Alzheimer's Association.
Mm-hmm.
So people know, if they have questions, they can call our 24/7 helpline,
Yep.
which is 800-272-3900, 24 hours free. And there's trained helpline specialists that can answer your calls, answer questions. Because being a program coordinator, I'm working a lot with families.
Okay.
And I try, it's great when I can meet a family right after a diagnosis and help them understand all these resources,
Yeah.
Throughout the country, but even in Washtenaw County, it's truly a hotbed of resources
Sure.
for older adults and people living with the disease.
Yeah.
But it's one of the worst things to hear when someone says, oh, I wish I would have known about you 3 years ago when I was a caregiver.
Right.
So we're trying to change that so people immediately think, okay, 24/7 helpline, Alzheimer's Association, and know that we're here to provide care until there's a cure.
Yep. And you talked a lot about the services, and I want to talk more about that. The Michigan Great Lakes chapter of the Alzheimer's Association, again, has a variety of services, including but not limited to. And again, you mentioned the 24/7 helpline, again, which offers information and advice to more than 250,000 callers each year, and provides translation services in more than 200 languages, and more than 4,500 support groups throughout the country, and connect people across the globe through your online messaging boards. And you also provide caregivers and family, again, with comprehensive online resources and information through, as you mentioned, the Alzheimer's and Dementia Caregiver Center, which features sections on early stages, middle stages, and late stage caregiving. So again, wide variety of services. What would you say? Why is it important to be able to speak to a family and say, you know what, we're here for you?
Mm-hmm. I think that, even just in that list you read, there's that and more. And it can be overwhelming, and I try to err on the side of caution. I want people to have all the information.
Sure.
But with everything going on, it can be hard to remember all of the information or to sort through it. So I like to be there to help people navigate these resources, listen to what their actual questions are.
Sure.
Because every person with the disease is very different. Once you've met one person with Alzheimer's, you have met one person with Alzheimer's, and so different things are going to work for different people.
Mm-hmm.
And so if someone, for example, is really maybe shy or doesn't like to talk in groups of people,
Right.
I might suggest our alzconnected.org, which is kind of like an online support group,
Sure.
versus our in-person support groups, which might fit for somebody else. Or if somebody doesn't like to use the computer, they can call our 24/7 helpline,
Got it.
and those people can translate those services.
Sure.
And I also have partners in the community who are really great supporters of not only the association,
Yeah.
but also of other families in the community who are going through similar issues. So I think it's helpful to be able to talk with a family, listen to what their specific questions are, and then be able to slowly walk them through.
Right.
Do we need to start with education about the disease? Do
Right.
you want to go to a support group? Do we need to start looking at care options or planning for assisted living if that's what
Yeah.
someone might need?
Right.
So I think there's so many resources, but it can be overwhelming
Right.
if you're not familiar with the website or don't like using computers or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
that's why I like to be there to help guide that process.
Sure. And again, I think the fact that you're there so that it's not overwhelming for them, they're not intimidated, by what they're presented with, by discovering that they have these symptoms or discovering that they have Alzheimer's. Again, I think it's a great thing. On that, you have provided us with a great video to watch about the Alzheimer's Association, and I'd like to take a look.
Okay, great.
All right. What a tremendous video, my goodness.
Yeah, I know. I get like goosebumps every time I watch it. It's very, I think, powerful.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, definitely, and I think definitely speaks to the general population, right, about how important it is to be able to connect with someone like yourself, a program coordinator, if they are in the area and feel that they need to reach out. And so, thank you for showing that. That was great. I want to touch, too, because you talked earlier about those statistics, right? The 1 in 3 seniors within the U.S. Have some form of Alzheimer's, right? And then 180,000, 65 or older. Again, those are pretty big statistics. In your opinion, with the work that's being done, do you think these numbers can decrease?
Yeah, I think that's what we believe for sure. There's currently not a survivor of Alzheimer's disease, and you mentioned 1 in 3 people will die with Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia. But some researchers are saying that the first survivor is alive today. But I do think that before we find a cure, we'll probably find a way to prevent symptoms. That's where a lot of the research is now.
Sure.
Or to slow the progression of the disease. And I think finding these key pieces of information will then help us to develop a cure. There's a study right now happening with the Alzheimer's Association called the Pointer Study, and it's actually based off of a different study that had happened internationally.
Okay.
And So this study is focused on prevention, and it's finding that there's 4 keys that people can use to reduce their risk for Alzheimer's disease, including cognitive activity, exercise, healthy diet, and social engagement. So it's great information. It's nothing probably we haven't heard of before.
Sure.
But I think if they're able to show definitively, like, yes, these things can reduce your risk, and we can encourage people to partake in these, activities, that we can decrease the numbers. And again, early detection and prevention is where a lot of the research is right now.
Sure. Well, and you bring up a great point too. You talked about, one of those being social interaction, right, with preventing or attempting to prevent Alzheimer's. Now, obviously, a lot of us use social media, a lot of us use technology. Does that count in your mind, or is it more of doing this, having a conversation, going out to, the amazing art fair on Main Street or things like that?
I think it'll be different for every person. So the important part is that people feel supported, they feel like they're able to connect and engage with people.
Sure.
And for some people, that's online for them, and that, is how they're comfortable or what they're able to do.
Right.
I personally, like the in-person interactions, and that makes me, feel most supported.
Sure.
But I think there is something too to be said for these, international connections that are happening that couldn't have, taken place before, the social media and things like that. So I think having a variety of ways to interact is, best. And when people are just able to make those close connections, however possible, I think, whatever way people feel comfortable doing that and helps them feel connected to others, like they have social supports, that's the key.
Sure. And you talked diet too. I'm curious, what kind of foods help?
Yeah, so right now the Mediterranean diet is the kind of, the ideal that we're talking about a lot. So a lot of beans, lean protein, really high in fruits and vegetables. So again, probably nothing you haven't heard before, eat your fruits and veggies and lean proteins and, low in fats and sugar, things like that.
Sure. What about physical exercise, fitness, things like that? Is that important also?
Yeah, definitely. That's one of those 4 components as well. We say anything that is good for your heart is good for your brain, because so much of the blood pumped from your heart does go directly to fuel your brain.
Got it.
And so when you're able to work on aerobic exercise, that's historically been the go-to, that cardio, and again, I try to tell people that doesn't mean you have to run 10 miles every day, but but I know there's even, some chair exercises for some people that gets your heart pumping, or if you walk for, 20 minutes with a friend, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And there's some newer research coming out too, talking about the importance of, resistance training and thinking about weights and building up our muscles. So again, anything that's good for your heart and body is good for your brain. And it can't prevent the disease, but these are all things that can help reduce your risk.
Sure. Can you talk about one great memory you have while working with the organization?
Sure. I mean, there's so many. I would say probably, what sticks out to me immediately is the first time I attended our Walk to End Alzheimer's. So this year, our Ann Arbor Walk is on Sunday, October 7th. So it's a great event every year, but I had never been to one. And people were telling me, oh, you're going to cry, you're going to get goosebumps. It's like the biggest support group of the year, some people call it.
Wow.
And I get goosebumps just thinking about it. But, people who have the disease, speak, and everyone has these promise garden flowers, we call them. So everyone gets a different color. So if you have a purple flower, it means somebody who you've lost somebody to the disease. If you have a yellow flower, it means you're currently caregiving for a person with the disease. An orange flower means that you don't have a personal connection to the disease, but you understand the importance and support the cause. And then a blue flower means you're currently living with the disease.
Wow.
And so everyone has these flowers, and I think, we have an image of it, I think, too. And they, hold these flowers up, and, at one point, and it's just so powerful to see everyone coming together. And then what really got me is there's this white flower that represents the first survivor of Alzheimer's disease. And at this walk, they had all of the kids, all the little kids running around. They had little white flower necklaces on. And it was just so powerful, you know, to see all of these kids and thinking, you know, okay, this kid or this person could be the first survivor of Alzheimer's disease. And that's amazing. Like, that's all we want in our jobs, honestly. That's all we want. And so to have everyone together, everyone's there for the same reason. And, you know, parts can be a little heart-wrenching because, you know, it is sad and this isn't a fun disease, but it's also so uplifting.
Right.
And it's so hopeful, and everyone's there supporting each other, and it's just really an amazing event. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, so make sure, viewers, that you check out the walk on October 7th and, you know, Walk for Alzheimer's.
Yeah, you can put a team together and people, you know, fundraise in really creative ways, doing different sales or, you know, do it with their work a lot of times.
Sure.
And you put together your team, and then everyone comes the day of. It's this big party. You know, you do your walk, and everyone fundraises together to support these programs and services, as well as funding research to find a cure. Yeah, it's a really great event.
That's awesome. And you mentioned too all the resources, but you also rely a lot on volunteers, donations, the goodwill of others. So for those viewers watching, how can others get involved, Ashley? How can they volunteer? How can they make, you know, set up a walk team? How can they donate? How can they continue to help build the great research that all of you are doing?
Yeah. So I would say the first thing to do is go to alz.org/MGLC for Michigan Great Lakes Chapter. And there's information on there about how to volunteer, how to register for walk. We also have our other signature event is the Longest Day, which that takes place on June 21st, but you can actually hold your event anytime throughout the year. It's kind of a DIY fundraiser event. So some people do bake sales or, you know, whatever it is. There, you know, families will do things together. I know some people do bike riding. I'm having a trivia fundraiser with my trivia team. So information about the Longest Day is up there. You can volunteer to teach education programs, to facilitate a support group. We have policy advocates too, who will go to DC and talk to local congresspeople about their story and about why we need funding, why we want support from people in Congress. We have our advocacy forum, which is really fun. If people also, you know, want to donate, that's all on that alz.org/MGLC. You can also always call our helpline. Again, it's 800-272-3900. And if you ask them about any of these things or connecting with your local chapter, they'll be able to tell us about that as well. And we can follow up with people individually. And I think I mentioned research as well.
You did.
So if you go to alz.org/trial match, you can sign up to be involved in research. And we actually have another cool event coming up August 29th. So the evening of August 29th at Washtenaw Community College at the Morris Lawrence Building, we're going to be having researchers in the area, and it's cool because we have a huge hub of research at the University of Michigan and the Michigan Alzheimer's Disease Center right in our backyards. So we'll have people come talk about research, the latest, you know, updates of what's happening in the last year, as well as to give some information about the disease. And that's for anyone, not just researchers or doctors or whatever. So yeah, tons of ways to get involved, but all of it's on that website, or you can call the helpline.
I mean, just a wealth of things going on around the community, and then a great thing too, like you said, with the researchers being able to educate the community about what's going on. Wow, wonderful. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. And folks, that's all the time we have for today. But again, I'd like to thank Ashley for joining us and hope that you enjoyed the program. Please be sure to tune in Ann Arbor Inclusive next month. And as always, stay awesome, Ann Arbor.